I have no shame in saying I want to be incredibly wealthy. My mum's family are terribly upper class.
Okay.
By the time it got to my generation, there was nothing left. I feel really passionately that women should be really ambitious about how much money they earn, about how much money they have. I thought turning over €1 million that we would have built this really successful business, and we had. It was incredibly successful, except I wasn't getting paid.
Chupi, thank you so much for coming in to join me on Money Talks. So we are smack bang in the middle of wedding season.
We are.
And as the maker of boutique engagement rings, where are we at in terms of spend?
Oh, I always think, you think about romance and magic and hope, and yet our job at Chupi is always thinking about when is it going to happen. So 25 to 30% of people get engaged during the summer. So we are at the height of magic and hope. Also slightly at the edge of the desperate boys who walk through the door who are like, oh yeah, cool, I need an engagement ring tomorrow. It's literally, you can see the fear in my team's eyes because we make everything in Ireland. So everything's handmade for you. So it's if the men of Ireland, and indeed the men of the world, could just plan 6 weeks in advance, it would be great.
Okay, got it. What about the 3 months' wages?
It's gone.
It's gone?
It's totally changed. So it used to be for an engagement ring, 3 months, and it was 3 months pre-tax. Ooh. Not even 3 months post-tax. So 3 months pre-tax was the traditional rule. The big shift that has happened, I would always say we are the first generation of women buying our own diamonds. There's a big shift in how diamonds are bought and when you buy them. So now they come in and shop together. So you'll normally go shopping with your partner and you talk it out. For some people, 3 months salary is nothing. For some people, 3 months salary is everything. And you're at different stages of your journey now. It used to be you got engaged, then you bought a house, then you had your babies. Yes. Quite frequently our couples come in and they already have their house and babies, or they are completely at a different point. So I would say average spend in Ireland in an engagement ring is about 3,000.
Okay.
And that's not 3 months of it's not a particularly tied to a 3 month salary. It's just where spend is. But we would see rings walk out the door, everything from 500, sort of about 15,000.
Somebody told me the other day that a woman then has to go and buy the man a gift.
Oh, no.
Yeah, a man told me that.
Well, actually, there is a gorgeous tradition that's kind of bubbling under of buying a watch.
Yeah, that's and somebody said it to me as though it was gospel, and I was like, gosh, that's the first I've heard of it.
And I would say like watches are having a huge moment. So there's some gorgeous McGonagall's, amazing luxury watch brand based in Ireland. We're seeing Nomad up in Belfast. There's a little emerging watch scene. There's obviously some fantastic stuff happening with the bigger brands. Yeah. But it's there and it's ticking away. But I wouldn't say it's standard by any means. Most people, they come in, most of the time, it's normally he buys the engagement ring. But she sometimes kicks in. There's a whole emerging trend where they're making a decision together. They're already living together. They already have a shared bank account.
Yes.
It doesn't mean there aren't the adorable stories. I remember walking into the store one day and this guy walked in, threw 100 quid on the desk, winked at my colleague and walked out. I was like, okay. I just wanted to check in. I was like, are you okay? Is there anything you want to talk about? Are you, just checking in? He just literally threw the 100 quid and ran. Yeah. It turned out he was planning to propose. They had a joint account, every single cent going into the joint account. And every week he took out 100 quid for spending money to buy lunch, to buy his bus ticket. And he was using that to pay off his ring. And so he was coming into us with the 100 quid cash, paying off the ring, dashing in. And he was eating basically beans on toast and walking everywhere to do the ring. So there's every story within that happens. So it's magical.
What about your own wedding? Did you go all out?
We were so poor when we got married. So we just, I'm 41 and we met when we were 16. So we were babies. We had a party to celebrate our 25 years this year. Which is crazy. My baby, my girl is only small, but if she walks in with a spotty teenage boy age 16 tells me she wants to marry him, I will be horrified. But we met very young. We kind of, grew up together, went to school together, went to uni together. I started my first business. He went in, he's a professional nerd, went in-house. And then he told me when we were 16 he was going to marry me one day. And I remember I'm daughter of the revolution. I was brought up, my mum is one of the founding members of the women's movement, sort of these 13 women who burnt their bras outside the door, who believed in better. And so I was not brought up to the idea of getting married. I was brought up to also burn my bra. And he said, I want to marry you one day. And I said, don't be ridiculous, as you should. And 10 years later, I eventually said yes. And I also did the only sensible thing when he proposed. I had a quarter-life crisis and quit my job. So us getting engaged became this trigger for me. I knew I was working for one of the big fast fashion brands at that point. I got scouted at university and was designing women's wear for them. Loved it. It was the dream job, 21, working across Dublin and London. But I remember wearing my engagement ring for the first time, and it's such a profound memory. I can literally picture where I was standing. It was Montpellier, south of France. It was midnight, and I just said yes, and wearing my ring and realizing it was a piece of the future. Like, it's like nothing else. Your engagement ring is something that you own for a generation and then you pass on.
Yes.
It's like all fine jewelry. We get given these things by our mums and our grannies. But for me, that moment of being like, oh my gosh, I could imagine my daughter who didn't exist, I could imagine my daughter wearing this ring one day. And so this is a very long way of saying we were incredibly poor by the time we got married, because I'd quit my job to start Chupi. So we took our life savings, and it was a housing crisis back then. It's always a housing crisis, right? It's Ireland, a housing crisis. And we went out and I wrote a letter to 3 landlords in Dublin. And we wanted to live close to town so that we'd no commuting costs. And so 3 landlords in Portobello, wrote them all a letter saying we were post-partying, pre-children. And so we were the perfect tenants, and offered a year's rent in advance. So
now that's very smart. And where did you get that advice?
That was, I figured, I was like, what assets do we have? And we had our life savings, which was probably about 25,000 quid at that point. We were late 20s. The money we should have been spending on a house or on either a house deposit or a wedding. And we took that money and I went, if I can secure our rent for the next year, then I can earn very, very little working. And I just thought, well, screw it. The worst thing that happens is they say no. Yeah. And one amazing guy came back and we rented that house for 5 years, every year paying the rent in a year in advance. And it was always a scramble trying to get it done, but did that. And then kind of a couple of years into doing that, realised we were hitting year 4 of being engaged and possibly at some point should move on. Not only year 4 of being engaged, year 14 of being together. So we decided, woke up in January and went, okay, let's get married this year. So we organised it in about 6 months, and it cost about 14,500 to do a 5-day wedding for about 80 people.
Whoa.
It was wing and a prayer stuff.
How did you, tell me where you cut costs.
What did we do? Okay, first of all, we chose to get married in a field. That definitely helped. So we were one of the kind of very first barn weddings in a venue that hadn't quite figured out how to do it. And so it was a bit scrappy, definitely. That was the scrappier end of things. We have an amazing gang of friends.
Yeah.
So we had a friend who was a photographer, and Brian, my husband, built him a website. So Brian's a really talented user experience designer. So Brian built him a website and he shot our wedding in exchange. Another friend who is an amazing Australian guy, Shantanu Starek, who was travelling his way all around the world. And he was trading his skills as a photographer.
Yes.
In exchange.
I remember.
Do you remember Shantanu?
Yes.
Oh, he's amazing. He's living in Ireland now.
TED Talk on this, or TEDx.
Yes,
right?
He is, and he's brilliant. And Shantanu, we basically put him up and kicked in some cash towards his flights. And so Jason and Shantanu shot it. My brother's a filmmaker, so he and his gang did the video. Other friends are in a band, so they played for basically bed and board. And it was just this. I made the rings, obviously. That was. And was it perfect? No, definitely. I've been to loads of gorgeous weddings since that are magical, but it was at that moment in time incredible, and it had all of the people I love. I always remember standing at the top of the chapel, and bearing in mind I'd never imagined getting married. I'd never had this moment, but standing at the top of the chapel beside Brian and thinking, if the world ends today, everyone I love is in this room. It's okay. And that, and that was the driver behind getting married, actually, for us, was there's very few days in your life you get all your people in one room.
Yeah, gorgeous. Are you and your husband financially compatible?
Oh, that's a really good question. We're really financially different, actually. So he's frugal in ways I'm not. Okay. And spendthrift in ways I'm not. And I'm frugal in ways he isn't, and spendthrift in ways he isn't. We're very different.
Yes.
We've very different upbringings. So he is his gorgeous parents, and he came from absolutely no money. And first in his family to go to uni, first for literally generations to go to uni. Now incredibly, stable and very different, but came from very, very little. And I came from absolutely nothing. My mum brought us up on what was called deserted wives allowance.
Yes.
That's what, so I'm not sure what it's called now, but basically when your husband runs off, the dole for was deserted. And I remember the book because it was a paper book. And I always remember, because we were the only, kind of like the only gay in the village. My mum was the only divorced woman in the village. Yes. And so it was quite a big deal that she was a deserted wife. And so mum brought us up on deserted wives allowance. But the difference, whilst we both grew up with very little money, I had come from an incredibly privileged family. So my mum's family are terribly upper class.
Okay.
By the time it got to my generation, there was nothing left. Very classic Catholic Irish family, nothing left. But mum had been, brought up in the big house, had, been grown up in Fitzwilliam Square. Yes. So it had this she gave us this incredible gift that whilst when Dad left, there was no money. And I genuinely mean no money. I look back at the photographs, really underestimating how poor we were. But we didn't feel it.
Yes.
There was always, a friend who would lend a cottage somewhere so we could go on holidays.
Yeah.
Mum wrote for The Independent at the time.
Yes.
So the Sunday Independent were the kind of difference between extreme poverty and I remember the first time we went, for kind of maybe second time I ever got to go on holiday as a kid was Mum's incredible editor in the Sunday Independent sent her to review, like one of those resort things in Crete, and we got to go.
Wow.
So whilst we had a very similar, in one sense, I had this big privilege of growing up and believing it was possible and growing up. And it's a really strange one. I don't think I understood the privilege of it until I grew up and realised whilst I came from nothing, I came from no money, I came from huge privilege.
So your mum has just written a book on this.
She has indeed.
Where she delves a little deeper into the divorce, and it was in fact her elder sister that your father left her for.
Basically, it's a Coronation Street headline. My dad ran off with my mum's older sister, and it was essentially condoned by most of her family, which is sort of the bit that makes it extra Coronation Street.
Yes.
They all denied it. And then my granny essentially said to mum, once mum finally had figured out that was what was happening, she was essentially like, well, Rosita. So my mum is Chupi Sweetman, and the book is Girl with a Fork. And she essentially said to mum, well, you just have to, they're in love. There's nothing you can do about it. And Dad left us. Oh. And then they tried to get custody of us. And my aunt is a barrister and mum is a journalist. So it was this custody battle that happened over, would we... And mum always says... She's amazing. She's very self-aware, and she always says she was mad. She was heartbroken with grief. And so in that sense, all her family were like, oh, you're mad. And she always says, well, she was heartbroken and was filled with grief. And so in one rational sense, when they said, oh, you're being overly dramatic, she was like, I was dramatic. I was really, really upset. Not only did she lose her husband, but she lost the majority of her family.
Yeah.
And it's a funny one. Because so mum's written the book, it's been incredible, been a bestseller. Gorgeous Panty launched it for her. Yeah. Mum and Panty have the best. It's this kind of gorgeous marriage of the best of Ireland. I always think of Mum and Panty, because second wave and third wave feminism is complicated around how, and it's all, J.K. Rowling down the rabbit hole, and Mum and Panty have got this gorgeous relationship. Sabina Higgins very kindly came as well to the launch, and it's this lovely moment to go, it was unbelievably tough thing for Mum, incredible. I don't know how to survive it, but
and tough for you because you're only what,
tiny, 3, 4, 5. Probably by the time Dad left, I was about 5 or 6. Still a bit. The dates are all a little muddled. It's subsequently. I always think. Subsequently, my dad left my aunt and ran off with someone else. Yeah. So Mum, in essence, got the last laugh, which always makes it funny. And I now have this gorgeous family. So my dad's in his 4th marriage, and my big sister always said to me the loveliest thing. So we are 5 kids, currently only on 2 continents, which is pretty good going for us. We're normally on 3 continents. So there's 5 of us. And my big sister said, we were incredibly lucky because we could choose to love each other. We didn't have to. And look, I realise that's an optimistic take on it. There's loads of people who go through these extreme journeys. I kind of think it's such an extreme version of normal that you either sink or swim. And we had Mum. I got one incredible parent and one mediocre. And that's more than you can ever ask for.
Yeah. You'd think that somebody who went through that as a very, very young child would have what we kind of now call scarcity mindset.
Yes, yeah.
But you don't. You seem to think very abundantly. You said you never felt
poor.
Like you were poor.
And I think that's really Mum. Like, she was incredible. We never, and my God, I have no idea. How did she pay the mortgage? How did she keep a roof over our heads? How did she, there was never a sense, I really genuinely believe there was nothing I could have asked her for that she wouldn't have figured out a way to have gotten to. And obviously, look, I'm oldest child. I was very financially aware, very young, and very aware, but I wasn't scared. I just was like, okay, I'm going to build it.
Yes.
And I was like, okay, I can do this. My little girl, who's now 5, we did a lemonade stand at the weekend, and it was the cutest thing in the whole world. They're 5. One of her little best friends, who's 6, and then their another little friend who's 2.5, and they were trying to figure out how much to charge for the cookies, and her friend was like, a tenner. Yeah, we're trying. Yeah, just like, yeah. And we were like, Alex, it might have to be, maybe we're going for €1. But I remember my first little stand was Granny's house. And it was, my granny had the worst orchard in Ireland. Just some apple and plum trees that genuinely produced the most disgusting fruit. I don't know what was wrong. They were cursed. Probably Granny had cursed them. And but I set up a little stall on Strand Road with my cousins to sell the plums and apples. And so very early on, I almost think I was actually texting. I've got a wonderful gang of female entrepreneur friends. All of these amazing women who run brilliant businesses. And one of them is going in for big surgery. Honey, I hope you won't mind me telling this story. I'm not going to name you. It's just such a good one. She's going in for surgery this weekend.
Yeah.
Really major surgery. She's all good, but she's going to basically have 4 weeks bed rest, and she's an entrepreneur. And she was messaging us going, we've got this really wonderful project on the go. And she was like, give me loads of work. I'm not going to be able to she's not going to be able to be on her feet for 4 weeks. And she's looking for work. She's like, give me it, give me it, give me it. Because I almost think entrepreneurship one day we'll sort of study it in the same way we look at ADHD. There's definitely some correlation.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
Of some sort of desire to go to scale, not to climb the mountain. I've never had the urge in my life to climb a mountain, but to build the mountain. And so I started Apples on Strand Road. My brother and I ran a little food business when we were maybe like 12 or 13, just a little country market, little food business. I started my women's wear label properly. I was about 14 or 15.
Yes.
Sold my first piece in Temple Bar when I was 15, and then opened my first stall in Temple Bar in what was Cowes Lane Market when I was 16.
Yes.
And, paid my way through school and college on that market that eventually got me scouted into the design job I got.
Yes.
So, no,
And I remember it all,
That's Katie. That's crazy.
Yeah, I remember it all. I remember all the early pieces, and it's so funny to see where the brand's gone to now. It's
20
fascinating.
years.
It's fundamentally evolved.
It's 20 years. Since I joined Topshop November 20 years ago. We're going to have a party. You have to come. I'm going to. So, for context, I got basically. I always think luck is an interesting one, and manifesting is an interesting one, and. The older I get, the more aware I am of my privilege of having an Irish passport, of being born in Ireland, of being white, of being middle class, of all of these things that I have that I had no control over. I love a dream and a plan. I really firmly believe you should have a dream of what you want your life to look like and a plan that's going to get you there. But I always find manifesting a bit tricky. No one's manifesting their way out of Gaza right now. You can't manifest your way out of Ukraine, of Sudan, of all the crises in the world. And so I struggle with the dream and the plan of just dreaming, of just being like, oh, I'm going to vision board. I'm like, do your vision board and build a plan behind it.
Yes.
Because I've had a few moments in my life that have changed my life, these big pivot moments that have defined the next decade. And the one in my teens was probably starting that little label, which was, and I say label very grandly, it was, 2 or 3 dresses a week. It was the walking into, it was Shashi in Temple Bar. Do you remember the pink building? Yeah. Walking into Deirdre and Emer, and they gave them 2 dresses in one bag. And I came in a week later and they'd sold 1 dress in 1 bag.
How exciting.
£50. I thought it was rich. Never mind it had taken me probably £100 to make the damn things.
Yeah. Tell me about the walk back to the bus stop then.
So I always define it as the difference between art and design.
Yeah.
And so when I eventually went and did a year in college, and a lot of people have always said to me, "Are you very commercial?" And for me, all I hear in that is like, that's my whole job, because art creates one beautiful thing, one piece of art that breaks your heart, that all it needs to do is connect with one person to have meaning in the world. And design's job is solving a problem. So from 15 to 26, I solved the Friday night problem. What are you going to wear on a Friday night? You're going out with your girls, you're going to dance on a table, you're going to drink Malibu and Coke as it was back then. What are you going to wear? And that's all I did, was I solved the Friday night problem. And I loved it. And now my job with Chupi is we solve the problem of how do you mark the biggest moments in your life? How do you ask your best friend to marry you? How do you welcome your babies into the world? How do you celebrate leaving the shit guy who broke your heart? How do you celebrate the milestones in your career? So these massive moments that happen for us, that's what jewelry does. It's a biography of your life, and you mark your moments. And
well, tell me, what about some of the hardest money lessons that you've learned along the way, from that moment of making your first 50 quid to where you are now, which is you're a global jewellery entrepreneur?
I think the biggest one, so I've always worked hard. I was brought up with the idea, so I was homeschooled. I have to add, not like those currently in the headlines. Yes. We had a really liberal homeschooling that, as I said, it was all about this world and being better, and the idea that we could change the world. And so we were really brought up. The best thing about homeschooling is it gives you a really strong sense of autonomy. So if you want to go and learn French, you go and get the books. If you want to, and there's no one to blame if you fail. So part of the problem, I think, sometimes is we're like, oh, I'm really bad at English because my teacher was bad. And there's lots of truth in that. But actually, maybe it's not just your teacher. Maybe the school system was bad, and maybe all these external factors, and maybe you didn't put in enough effort. And reminding ourselves that, if you have all the privileges of being born in Ireland, you can pretty much do anything you want to do. And again, reminding class is a huge privilege. But I had this ability to go, okay, yeah, I'm going to do the thing. And so when I launched into Topshop, I worked for 2 years straight without taking a day off. We didn't take a day off. I just was head down, emerged, took a breath. I was 21 when I started, 23 when I took a breath. And so then when I started Chupi, and I thought, okay, I'm going to learn from all the mistakes I made in this first round of business, and I'm going to get better. I'm going to do it. And I was saying to you earlier, I sit on this amazing program called Going for Growth, and it's co-founded by KPMG and Enterprise Ireland. It's incredible. It helps scale female entrepreneurs, because the big challenge with women is that we tend to start business and we dream quite small. Yeah. Because we look at who's out there. And, I started nearly 15 years ago. So the who's out there now is amazing. There's like Amy killing it out in the world. Gorgeous Anya Kennedy of Smooth Stick. There's these amazing entrepreneurs doing incredible things. But back then there was less. And, every generation there's even less. So I did my application, and it's 10 years since I did the program. I now lead on the program. So I now get to support amazing women as they grow their businesses. I've had some amazing women on my table. But when I applied, you had to state your ambitions for within 3 years. So at that stage, the business was turning over a couple of 100,000. I had one person working part-time. We were just about to go into wonderful Kilkenny Design had just taken us on. We were about to go onto every flight for Aer Lingus. And I had to write down, what did I imagine the business was going to turn over? And it was €1 million. It's genuinely the biggest number I could think of. Genuinely, the idea of, if it was a man, he would have written 10 million. It would never, I'd capped myself, because I do firmly believe in that idea that you can only grow to where you set your lid. If you say it's €1 million. Yes. And I got to €1 million. I did within 3 years. That was 2014. We'd turned over our first €1 million within 3 years. And I sat down at the end of the year, and I always paid myself last. So that was still in the middle of the paying the rent in advance. And I would at the end of the year go, okay, what's left? And I basically get paid what's left. And I think I paid myself something like 30,000 that year. And so I reckon at that point, and that was, that was maybe an 80-hour week. I was on less than minimum wage. And it made me realise, I thought turning over €1 million, that we would have built this really successful business. And we had. It was incredibly successful, except I wasn't getting paid. Yes. And suddenly I realised was I 30, just in around 30. We'd no house, no prospect of ever buying a house at that stage. No one was going to give me a mortgage on, I didn't have a salary. And so March 2017, for the first time, I put myself on a salary of €2,500 a month. And I thought I was rich because I suddenly decided I needed to get paid.
Tell me about businesses turning a profit, because you're in going for growth and you must hear a lot of international kind of stats on this. Like when does a business turn profitable? Like, I
think it's so different for everyone, right? You know, that it's so different at each stage. And that's the challenge. That's the entrepreneurship conundrum, because there isn't a path. There isn't a do this, and then you turn a profit and then gravy. And that's partly what Going for Growth does. It's peer-to-peer networking, mentoring. And so you basically have a lead entrepreneur and 6 or 7 young businesses, or not so young businesses. We've everyone from sort of pre-seed to 30-year-old family businesses. And the idea is that you realise that almost all the challenges in businesses, quite like life, are universal. Like actually, if you get a whole bunch of people together, our challenges, whether entrepreneurs working in companies or entrepreneurs running companies. But I would say definitely I still believe in the 5 years. It's something
5 years.
90% of businesses go bust in the first 5 years, 95%. It is terrifying.
Yeah.
There's huge data, and it's because the infrastructure doesn't exist.
Yes.
So I would always say 0 to 1 million and 3 to 10 employees were the bit that nearly killed me. It was so hard because there was no infrastructure. You know, we didn't have someone in HR. We didn't have someone to call, you know, we just started our finance piece. I always remember my amazing financial controller, Anne, who is incredible. The only financial controller that also bakes. Would thoroughly recommend it for a hire. Get yours to be both exceptionally good at numbers and an amazing cook. Yeah. She joined us in a freelance capacity 10 years ago, because we just had our 10-year anniversary. Joined us freelance, and she sat me down one day and went, "You need me. You actually need to hire me full time. This is not safe. You are not unique." And I remember being like, okay, because she, I'm good at many things, and I actually love numbers. Daughter of an economist, I love the number side of the business. But I think and you're not always in profit. Like we made losses for 2 years in a row. We're back in profit, but you have years when you make a loss. And I think
you have to shift your focus and think more long term when you have those years. Do you have to be kind of thinking?
I think you've got
10-year plan.
I think you've got to be both. You've got to be pragmatic and understand that you can't win every day. You know, entrepreneurship, you see the roller coaster. It exists like that for a reason. You know, it's quite like your career, entrepreneurship. It's not a straight line. It's never going to be a straight line because the economy isn't a straight line.
Yes.
Everything, product development isn't a straight line, everything. But I think you have to really be obsessed with the ride and the journey, and not just about the highs. You know, there's gorgeous highs. We've had some of the most incredible highs. We've also had some of the most horrendous lows. You know, had to do redundancies, we've gone through all of the worst of it, high and low. And yet, it's Brian and I, we both work in the business. So I persuaded him, recruited him, whatever way you want to call it. He came in about 6 years ago, and he spends about 80% of his time in Chupi. And so we are very, you know, our life is Chupi, and we're very involved, and we have our little girl. But we do this check-in every year to be like, you know, we adore it. You know, this is, and, you know, it's so important. You have this one precious life. What are you going to do with it? What does that look like? And I think accepting that it is going to be ups and downs and enjoying the journey and not being blind. You know, maybe sometimes you've made terrible decisions. Maybe, you know, you have to change. Chupi has grown with us. Yes. It's changed and evolved from who she was 13 years ago to the business we've built today. And that's incredible. If we'd stayed rigid on what it needed to be and how it needed to build. And also I do think there's a really important piece about understanding what matters to you. Things like, for me, everything is made in Ireland. Yes. That's something we'll never compromise on. We have this incredible team with over 100 years of experience. And you see it in their hands, and that legacy, that's incredible. And so you've got to decide, you know, how are you going to, and what does success look like? Yeah.
And tell me, if somebody came to you today and was like, you know, I have a business idea, it's a fashion business idea, and I want to get it off the ground in Ireland, what would you say to them?
I think the huge thing that's changed. So I try and remind my team, some of whom are, so what do we start at? Probably 2021 up to mid 60s. But I sometimes have to tell the younger guys that, like, I grew up without the internet. Yes. It's such a funny thing to say, right? You know, that idea of we all existed without the internet, but social media is such an incredible gift. We have a community of 300,000 people all over the world.
Yes.
Who, you know, we have people who fly in every week from around the world to buy their ring with Chupi.
Wow.
And that's the greatest privilege, you know, whereas when I started work with Topshop 20 years ago, social was just happening. But if you wanted to do anything, you basically would have to take out print advertising, sort of 10K to get one page. Whereas now, from your phone literally in your hand, you can communicate with the world. Mm-hmm. But I actually think the greatest challenge now is that we see such success and we see such incredible viral sensations that build overnight, that the biggest barrier to success is ourselves.
Oh,
because we stop. We go, oh, I can't do it. It's not possible. It's already been done, or they've already done it. But it's the fear of failure. We're so scared of failing, and we're so scared of. And it's funny, actually. You asked me about the worst moments, and I would say I went through after my daughter was born. And we went a really long road. We were 4 years having her, of all the heartbreak and loss on that journey. And so when she arrived into the world, and she also arrived in COVID. So 0 out of 10 would recommend becoming a first-time mum in the middle of a pandemic on a really high-risk pregnancy, having gone through IVF for 4 years. Yes. But I experienced kind of proper fear for the first time. And I really think it took me about a couple of years. I think postpartum is 3 years. I really strongly feel it's kind of 2 or 3 years. This idea that you can have babies and then I think there's a big, and I very much felt it for me, everyone's different, but I went through this, I became really risk adverse.
Yeah.
And I'm not particularly risk averse. I remember walking down the stairs, holding her and being terrified I was going to drop her. Our stairs are not particularly scary. It wasn't particularly, but for the first time I had something very vulnerable and very precious. And I think that is, we tend to, particularly being Irish, be very afraid of failure because everyone's watching. Mom's watching, Mary down the road is watching, your cousin Anne follows you on Instagram.
They're all laughing at you.
They're all laughing, they're all looking at you.
So those instincts, that sense of being like risk-taking come back again?
It did. Oh, it absolutely, yeah. It really very much came back. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm just thinking, like, you have this incredible destination store now in Power Square. So
it came back. It came back. Yeah, no, we raised money. We did a big fundraise nearly 3 years ago, but venture capital, less than 2% of venture capital goes to women. So to contextualise it, if you're in a room as a woman and there's 49 men have raised money and your brother is 49 times more likely to raise money for the exact same business, in the exact same sector and doing the exact same thing, 49 times more likely to get funded. And we raised in that 2% cohort. So we raised money to go and do a big scale up and have done some incredible things so far. So I opened a 5,000 square foot store just off Grafton Street on beside Brown Thomas, and she's a beauty.
It's a beautiful store.
Did a big rebrand. So the Chupi that was born in my spare room 12 years ago went through a huge evolution, has gorgeous new packaging and branding, and we've done some amazing things. We made some mistakes. We definitely have. But no, my fear went. But those years, I think it was actually really good. It's quite like, I always think, we all have blind spots. And one of mine was definitely, I wasn't particularly afraid. My brother and I play this game of what's the worst that could happen.
Yeah.
So when you're going to go do something, I did a talk for Google and it was 2,500 people. And I thought, I was a bit nervous. I've spoken to big crowds, but it was the biggest one I'd done, and it was also Google. And I thought, well, the worst thing that happens is I'm dreadful. And that's it. Like, that's the worst thing that could possibly happen. I drop my pen. I'm a bit boring. No one is that excited. And that's the worst thing. And then you walk on and you're free.
Yeah, because nobody's going to die.
Nobody's going to die. Nobody's going to die. And the same, I think I've always felt. We built Chupi from nothing. And now it's a bigger beast and it needs more care and less risk at the very start. And bearing in mind, most businesses fail within the first 5 years. My lovely accountant sat me down. We were doing end of year. And he went, Chup, everyone calls me Chup. He said, Chup, you would be better off from the dole.
Oh.
And he meant it. And he was absolutely correct. At that point, I would have been better off on the dole. I was earning far less than I would have gotten on the dole. And he was right. And I walked out of the meeting and I fired him the next day. And and he's gorgeous. We've stayed in touch. And I went and found an accountant who understood that I was absolutely correct. And as was he. We were both right. He said I'd be better off in the dole, and I knew I was building something that would pay off, but it would take time. It could have all gone wrong and we could have lost everything, but if we lost everything, we would have picked ourselves up.
Do you have financial regrets?
Oh.
Like shoulda, woulda, couldas, whether business or otherwise?
No, I in general don't do regrets. I did have to sit with that for a minute just to make sure I wasn't giving you the obvious answer. No, I don't really do regrets because life is terribly short. You don't know what is going to come. You've literally no idea what's around the corner or what's going to hit you or what's going to change. You know, it's the things that come on a Tuesday afternoon. I always remember that lyric, that blindside you. And so have I done anything? No, I don't think I've done anything I regret. Or have I missed out on anything? You know, funny generation, we came out into the dot-com crash and then then did the 2007, 2008 crash, and I've had a kind of interesting financial experience. But no, I also feel incredibly, we've done a couple of big, giant gambles that have paid off in terms of not necessarily, like we're not financially set up for life by any means. You know, we both still work. We need to pay our mortgage. You know, we still are very much we're in the juggle right now. A tiny kid. We've still got all of those things that go on, but we've made choices that have made our life worthwhile. So Brian and I bought our first house when we were 2018, 2019, having finally paid myself a salary and then convinced the bank to give me a mortgage, which was really intensely challenging as a company director. Getting a mortgage, my mortgage application was 380 pages because they average your salary over your last 3 years of earnings.
Yeah.
And then you have to provide all the books for your business and anything and everything you do. And we were just lucky. We had an incredible woman in AIB, Carol, who understood the business and understood that we had scaled and that, you know, obviously businesses turn over more, you get paid more. And she was amazing. Without Carol, I'm genuinely convinced we wouldn't have gotten our first mortgage. And so we bought our first house and we'd saved a big deposit for it. But I remember buying it and literally having to empty the change jar, you know, because it's all those last bits. We were to the wall getting into the house. Got in and then had a big renovation because it was pretty... it wasn't in a great shape. I always describe it as we literally had to take the plaster off the walls. And bought a house that had a lot of bedrooms. And the estate agent said to us, he was like, "Oh, you'll be able to fill this house with babies." And I just remember thinking, I would like one baby. Yeah. Just one. All I want in the whole world is one baby. Yeah. And the year we moved in, it finally worked. IVF. I always struggle with the manifest. This is partly probably why I'm so cynical on manifesting. We have a baby because of the joys of science and technology. You know, we did not dream her into reality. Acupuncture did not push it over the line. And so we've our gorgeous girl. And that she was then born into 2020. And my mum decided, we're all really close, particularly my mum and brother and I, who all live in Dublin. That mum decided she'd buy near us because she thought, this is my grandbaby. You know, it's a pandemic. It really, I think, solidified that idea of closeness. She lived at that point 1.98 kilometres from us. And I remember the 2K. Yeah. And I remember thinking, God, we're so lucky. And so she was going to sell to buy near us. And Brian sat me down and he was like, this is crazy. What are we going to do? Is your mum going to live, you know, like 500 metres away? Yeah. And Brian's really, you asked about financial compatibility. He's really pragmatic. So if I am optimistic, let's get a glass of whiskey, dance on the bar, there's going to be whiskey for the whole... If I'm abundance, he is anxiety. He's like, well, there's probably no whiskey left. If there's whiskey left, it might be poisoned. Sure, there's probably no glasses anyway. And it's a really good balance between us, having one person who's like, what's the worst case scenario, and one person who's the best. And he said, we'll have 2 leaky roofs to mind, 2 gardens to mow. And he'd grown up with his grandmother, who he adored. And they had this amazing relationship. And he lost her very young. I think he was only 4.5. And so he said, let's ask your mum to move in. We'll sell our house. We'll buy a house together.
Fantastic. And it's a two-way street. I'm a big believer in intergenerational living, because I do think it's both. The young person draws a lot from the older person and vice versa.
It's absolutely, I think it's incredible, that gift for every generation. So we basically sold, rented, bought in another housing crisis. Great crack. So have I any regrets? No. All the decisions we made have led us to the life we have now, and we live in a home we love that is slightly crumbling, as are all old houses, and we're having great fun doing it up.
Yeah. Can I ask about the IVF?
Yeah, of course, absolutely.
Because I understand a lot of women go into it thinking that it's going to cost X amount, and it costs a big fat Y.
So I think the thing, I'm obsessed with numbers. I'm obsessed with the data. What drives us? What do we do? Why do we do it? And that's again, it's probably a homeschooling gift. My favourite subject in school was math, and my favourite thing to do was art. And so I've never believed that I only can do one of them. And so I love the numbers and I love the data. And so when we reached the point that we were like, okay, this isn't working, and went to the doctor, I read all the data, and it's 85% of people will get pregnant within the first 6 months of trying. And for the remaining 15%, the data's appalling. Basically, your chances are, it's just horrific. And before doing IVF, and I talk about it because people don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Because it's one of the last taboos, which is really weird. And because it's so often thought of as, it's like, oh, it's you, and it's because you're going off and doing your career, and all this judgment, and also the pressure women are under to go and have your babies on a timeline, because our bodies are in this timeline. And so IVF it's about a 15% chance of every cycle. And I just thought you did IVF and had a baby. I was so naive. I thought you'd go do a cycle and then you'd get your baby. Yeah. And so we marched in thinking, okay, yes, we're really tough, but each cycle in theory is about 5,500. Realistically, it's more like 10. So it was about 45,000 having our daughter.
Worth every penny, though.
Worth every single penny. It was, I would have paid it 10 times over to have her in our lives. She is absolutely priceless. But also how unbelievable that there's a price on it, because we were in a position that we were saving for our house and doing IVF at the same time, which was financially crippling, but we were able to do it. And we had this huge privilege of being able to do it. And the state pays for one round now. Which is like, well done.
Fantastic.
It's a start. It's a great start. But one round is a 15% chance. So it's nothing. And and the challenge people are on with that journey.
So we're about to wrap it up, but I have one more question, Chupi. Do you feel wealthy?
Oh, there's this gorgeous TikTok trend, and it says it's basically younger you viewing you now and going, if 20-year-old me could see me now, she would think I was so wealthy because of the life you've created, because of the people you love. So yes and no, yes, because of the life I've created. Yesterday, I was down by the river with our gang and all these tiny little humans that have been part of our lives. And we've really intentionally bought near our friends. So we've had this amazing thing where we're all on, it's a running joke, we're basically all on the same bus route. And we've built this community because, like I said, my dad and my sister taught me this thing around you choose who you love. So you have the family you're born into, and then you have the family you build. And so we've built this incredible family. And so that's amazing. But on wealth, I feel really passionately that women should be really ambitious about how much money they earn, about how much money they have. In my 10 years might be a bit of a stretch, maybe 10, 15 years, I want to have enough money that I can invest in other businesses, because I see these phenomenal women. And so I have no shame in saying I want to be incredibly wealthy. I want the people I support to be incredibly wealthy. I want my team to be incredibly wealthy and financially successful. Because if we don't have the money and the power, you have the Jeff Bezoses of the world. Yes. You have the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world. Our job should be to, something like 4 men in the world have more wealth than the entire rest of the planet. The data is insane. And so, I think, girl, go get it.
I love that. Thank you so much, Chupi Sweetman. I love that chat.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.